Hello, class, and welcome to the 1st of December and the first day of working on our second module. We are now starting the second module of our 6th grade class with, over here, Lesson 1. Lesson 1 is going to start talking about how we're going to be dividing fractions by whole numbers, and we're going to be using visual models in order to help do that. Now, obviously, we've gone over sort of extensively, not only this year, but in years past, about how to just divide whole numbers by whole numbers. And we're going to actually look at dividing whole numbers by whole numbers when it comes to part A of our opening exercise. We're going to pass by part B for today, simply because for time reasons, I want to just focus on A, because part A is going to be our real division side of things, which is really what we're going to be getting into. So for part A of our opening exercise, it asks us, well, write a division sentence to solve each problem. Okay, makes enough sense. So question 1 is saying, well, 8 gallons of butter are going to be poured equally into 4 different bowls. How many gallons of batter are in each bowl? Well, that's honestly pretty simple. I have my 8 gallons, and they're being poured equally, or I could say that they are being divided into 4 equal bowls. And to be honest, that one's going to be very easy because 8 does divide evenly by 4. It's going to give us our answer of 2. That one's going to be super simple. Question 2 ramps up the difficulty just a tiny little bit. With question number 2, it says, well, 1 gallon of butter is going to be poured equally into 4 separate bowls. How many gallons of batter are going to be in each bowl? Well, it only brings up the difficulty just a little bit. We have our 1 being divided by 4 this time. But obviously, 1 does not divide evenly by 4, so we need to split it, our 1, into, well, 4 fourths. And then 4 fourths divided by 4 is going to give us our answer of 1/4. Not too difficult, but obviously just that little tiny bit more difficult than 8 divided by 4. For the third one, it's asking us to write a division sentence and draw a model to help us solve this. What we're going to be doing is I'm going to be drawing a tape diagram. I'm going to be drawing a tape diagram-like model for this. Just going to draw the longest. It's not really a true tape diagram. It's more of a model that will resemble a tape diagram. In that, well, I know that this whole long thing over here, I know that this is all going to be 3. This is my 3 gallons of butter. And, well, I need to pour it equally into 4 bowls, so that means I need to divide it into 4 equal pieces. So I'm going to be taking my 3 and I'm going to be dividing it by 4. Now, obviously, this is only a tiny little bit step up from 1 divided by 4. But it's not going to really be too much actual problem, because 3 divided by 4 well, I can just imagine this as, well, what do I need to multiply by 4 to give me 3/4? Or, quite simply, 3 divided by 4, that's going to give me each of these as 3/4. 3 divided by 4 is going to give me 3/4. So each of these bowls is going to have 3/4 gallons of butter. Now again, of batter, not butter. Now again, this was quite simple. We didn't really have any sort of problems with this because we've gone over division in the past. We know how to divide our whole numbers by whole numbers. But as we continue on, if I were to scroll down just a little bit to example 1, we see example 1 is 3/4 of a gallon of butter being poured equally into 2 separate bowls. Well, how many gallons of butter are going to be in each bowl? And that's where things might become just a little bit more difficult for us. So, once again, if we want to look at this, we can look at how we set up our division problems up here in order to find out how this division problem needs to be set up. Well, when I had 1 gallon of batter poured into 4 bowls, I was 1 divided by 4. So if I have 3/4 gallon of butter poured into 2 bowls, well, that's going to be 3/4 divided by 2. And that's where we see, oh, wait a minute. 3/4 divided by 2, that's a fraction divided by a whole number. We haven't really learned anything about that yet. So, to help us sort of get to that in the first place, let's sort of draw a diagram, just like what we had done up above. So in this case, instead of our whole being 3, our whole is actually going to be 3/4. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to draw my model in the shape of, instead of a long rectangle like this, I'm going to draw it into a bit more of a square-like rectangle. It's not a perfect square, but it's more square-like, I suppose. So, instead of just saying, oh, this is all going to be 3/4, I'm actually going to say that all of this is going to be 1 whole. This entire thing is going to be 1 whole, and I'm going to split it into my 4 parts. Excuse me. So now I've split it into my 4 parts, and I can say with certainty that this part right here is 3/4. Because I took my 1 whole and I split it into 4 parts. So 3 of those parts has to be 3/4. Only makes sense, right? Now, if I were to say that this entire square rectangle over here was 1 whole, and I were to divide this 1 whole in half, well, I could obviously draw it in half that way, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to also say, well, I can divide it in half like this. If my 1 whole were to be split across 2 different bowls, if I had 1 gallon split into 2 different bowls, it would be 1/2 and 1/2. But we have 3/4 split into 2 separate bowls. But the good thing about this little line is it changes how my gallon of batter is split up. as opposed to being split into fourths, where I had 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm now split into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 separate pieces. So now, as opposed to being split into 4 pieces, I'm split into 8 pieces. And my 3/4, as opposed to being 3/4, is now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 eighths. But now I want to find out what only one of these sections is. Because one of these sections is going into one bowl, and the other section here is getting put into another bowl. So, if I want to find out what one of these sections is, well, I need to see what's shaded in blue above the red line. So I have 1/8, 2/8, 3/8. Okay. So from the looks of things, if I do 3/4 divided by 2, I'm going to get an answer of 3/8. But we want to make sure, so let's look at the bottom as well to make sure that they're actually going to be equal pieces. Well, 1/8, 2/8, 3/8. Perfect. So it looks like both bowls are going to get that same amount, and it's going to be 3/8. So with my model here, I was able to take my 3/4 and divide it by 2, splitting it into 2 equal-sized parts. And I found out that my fourths turned into eighths by doing that. Okay. Okay. Hopefully this is making sense for us. And if it's making sense, then that means that we can go on to example 2. For example 2, we have 3/4 of a pan of lasagna is shared equally by 6 friends. So what fraction of the pan, of a whole pan, will each friend get? So the good news is actually the setup for this is going to be quite simple. It's going to be very similar to what we've done up here. I had 3/4 gallons of butter poured equally into 2 bowls. Now I have 3/4 of a pan of lasagna shared equally by 6 friends. So instead of being 3/4 divided by 2, now it's going to be 3/4 divided by 6. And we need to find out what that's going to give us. So the good news is I can set up my drawing in very much the same way. So I can just draw this large rectangle that's going to represent one whole pan. So this whole thing is going to be an entire pan of lasagna. And currently, there is 3/4 of that pan that is filled with lasagna. Actually, you know what? Let's use a slightly different color just to be safe. So 3/4 of this is filled with this strange looking green lasagna. So 1/4, 2/4, that line was not supposed to cross. So 3/4 of it is going to be filled with lasagna. Now, if I were to have my whole tray and I were to want to split an entire pan of lasagna across 6 friends, well, what I would do is I'd just split the entire pan into 6 different pieces, and everybody would get 1/6 of it. So I'm going to do the same here. I'm going to take my entire pan and I'm going to split it into 6 pieces. So now my entire pan has been split into 6 separate pieces. So instead of being 3/4 of the pan being covered in lasagna that's going to be split, I now have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. I now have 18 24ths. Because there's 24 total pieces in the whole pan. And there's currently only 18 right now that are shaded with lasagna. But that's not what the question's asking. The question's asking, well, how much is each friend going to get? So how much is each one of these sections going to be? Well, each of these sections is going to have 1, 2, 3 in them. And the whole pan has 24. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. So each person is going to get 3 24ths of a whole pan. Each person's going to get 3 24ths of this whole pan. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to stop us here. What? Stop us here. We still have example 3 and then all of these exercises to do. You're right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have you guys do example 3 on your own. It's going to be very similar to example 1 and example 2 for setting up this diagram. It's going to be a rope of length 2/5 meters, and that's going to be cut into 4 equal cords, 4 equal lengths of rope. And it's asking us, well, what's the length of each cord, of each piece of rope? Well, you're going to be solving it just like what we've done up here. Tomorrow, when we come back together, we're going to be looking at part B of our opening exercise together. And we're going to see how part B is going to relate to what we've found in part A. And then we'll use that to help us start to work on the exercises. But for now, your only work that you are going to need to do is just work on example 3. It's not a lot of work. So if you finish the work, then if you haven't yet finished / turned in the test, then that's what you'd be doing for the remainder of the period. With that, I hope you guys have yourselves a wonderful day. I will be seeing you guys tomorrow. Farewell.